By way of introduction, I have been in sales, whether it is in a direct sales role or managing salespeople or training and coaching sales for probably 30 some years now. I hate to say 36. It's been a very long time. I've had experience knocking on doors, cold calling out of the yellow pages, and being vice president of sales for a startup, a technology startup that got bought out by a multinational, and everything in between. So my actual sales experience is broad, and that has all contributed to the approach that I finally put together in the book, Sell Like Jesus. I am on a mission to help business owners and sales professionals, but mostly business owners, freelancers, people that have to sell what it is that they're passionate about and who want to sell in a way that honors Christ. Sometimes putting those two together can be a challenge. So I'm going to be talking about a love-based approach to selling. A little bit about me personally. You see Deb, Brown, and Maher. So I was married to Bill Brown for 25 years when he went home to be with Jesus. But the Lord blessed me with another partner, a man of God who we do ministry together. We do prayer ministry, deliverance ministry. So I'm now married to Charles. It was 7 years on Valentine's Day. So we're celebrating that. I live in central Pennsylvania in Cumberland County. So that's the map of Pennsylvania. I'm right across the river from Harrisburg, 25 minutes from Hershey, and 45 minutes from Gettysburg, a couple of city names that you might recognize. I have a ragdoll kitty named Queen Sheba. She turns 14 this year. And when I'm not working or worshiping, I'm gardening. I love that spring is springing, and I'm thinking about what it is that I'm going to plant in my 6 raised beds. I also love to paint. So you probably saw some paintings in the background here in my office. I paint as a form of worship. So I stand in front of the congregation, my back turned towards them, so they can watch as I paint from a blank canvas to a finished product as we worship the Lord. For those of you familiar with speaking in tongues, I call it a visual form of speaking in tongues. What I do is listen to Holy Spirit and make manifest on the canvas what it is that he wants to show the people who are present. So these are just 3 examples. You can see how diverse they are. I really just follow the lead of Holy Spirit. So, sell like Jesus. The first thing I want to do is address the pink elephant in the room, potentially, and that is what many people have said to me. Jesus didn't sell. Or the more offended version, how dare you lump Jesus in with salesmen? To which I've had to ask the question, why is there such a negative reaction to associating our Savior with the profession or the activity of sales? Anybody want to voice their thoughts on that?
Well, I think that there's just an overall negative connotation of what a salesperson is, and in American culture, sales has become a dirty word versus relationship building or things that Jesus did to gain a following and influence others. And if you think about it, that's what sales really is. But I can see how people would become offended if they thought Jesus was like a sleazy car salesman.
There you go. And therein lies the problem. When we say the word sales, we think of a sleazy car salesman. So when I never aspired to write the book. I never aspired to write any book, but the Lord gave me the book title first. So bringing this to completion was really an act of obedience to God, because I knew the persecution I would come under being a blatant Christian in the marketplace. There are lots of people who are Christian and they work in the marketplace, but not that many Christian business people have a distinctly Christian offering in the marketplace. Ministries, yes, but businesses, not as much. So there's been this false, I believe, satanically motivated separation of church and state. I don't want to get into that whole thing, but that's not what the Constitution said. We were not to separate our beliefs from our actions. So writing this book was a 7-year process. I got the title in 2012. It hit the streets December of 2019. So let me share a little bit more about the journey that I went on in actually writing the book and how it pulled together everything that I had been teaching and implementing in the business world, but had been doing it undercover. So Megan expressed the negative perception that most people have of sales. I'm curious, for each of you, what has your personal sales experience been? Has it been largely positive, negative, or somewhere in between?
In between for me. I've
Okay.
had some very good experiences and some pretty negative experiences. Even from, and even some of those negative experiences that have been from people who are Christian, quote
Yeah.
unquote Christian businesses who are, I came in to look at some semblance of a product. It just so happened to be a car dealership, of course.
Of course. But it didn't have to be.
Right. I found something online and went to the dealership and I said, I want to see this one. And they're like, oh yeah, that's nice, but look, for the same price, I can get you in this one. And it's a newer car and and they're really pushing on that. And I'm like, and we stood there waiting for sat there waiting for the dealership sales manager. I had a young kid who was getting hungry. And I'm like, you know what? I can't sit here and wait for this. I asked you to look at this one product and you're trying to push me 2 or 3 other different things. No, thank you.
Yep. It's an instant turnoff. Anybody else?
Mine, I've transitioned from a technology salesperson where we focused a lot on solution selling. So overall,
Yeah.
I would say my experience with sales and what I'm doing now has been positive. But I'm just feisty enough so that every time I run into, when we try and buy a car or whatever, and I run into these people who are horrible at building relationships, I call them out on it in like a loving way. And I'm like, here's some podcasts that will probably help you. Anything that I said, and we're not building a relationship. So go listen to this and we'll come back or we'll buy from somebody else.
Yeah.
Like that. Or when you get like those LinkedIn requests that are like selling you right out of the gate.
Right.
Like,
come on.
Okay, I know that you're green. I can see this. Like, I care about you as an individual. Please go watch how to sell. Like, here's a YouTube video. Thank you so much. Good luck with your career.
Yeah. I've even had one of those LinkedIn reach out and it's like some guy I don't know in an industry I've never been in reaches out and was like, hey, your profile caught my attention. We're expanding to your market. We'd love to talk to you. And I just wanted to be like, You don't know me, you don't know anything about me, and what was it about my profile that caught your attention? Like, because I don't feel that it's very, where I haven't put a whole ton of time into it, because I've had other stuff going on, but I didn't feel it was anything to stand out. And it was just, at that point, I'm like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, so it's pretty universal that all of us have had at least one, if not many, really ugly sales experiences, which makes us gun shy. So let's start to rebuild the vision of sales by looking at just a pure definition. Sales is the fair exchange of goods or services for an agreed upon compensation. And I'd like to expand that to include ideas, cooperation or teamwork, or evangelism and fundraising. It's the fair exchange of ideas or gaining buy-in for an agreed upon compensation. And this is where, when I can engage people who are turned off by the title, this is where I ask the question, Jesus didn't take money for our salvation, but he does make a requirement. And that requirement is steep. It's giving up of self, selfish desires, the desire to control. He says we have to take up our cross daily. You don't pay once, you pay every day. You pay every moment sometimes. What I'm saying is there's a cost to following Christ. The gift of salvation is free. Sanctification and holiness has a huge cost. And most people, as with most things, are not willing to pay the ultimate price. The apostles, the martyrs, gave their lives for Christ. They paid with their lives, literally. So I started selling at a very young age. I used to make these little pot holders and then walk around to the neighbor ladies and sell them for $0.25 each. So that was in the 60s, okay? I was thrilled to earn money. At age 10, I was doing babysitting. At age 11, I was doing the family paper route. So at a very young age, I learned the joy of being rewarded for my efforts with money. And by the time I graduated high school, I had a bank account, I had a savings of $3,000, which helped with my college. So I loved sales. I was thrilled with sales. And then I went to college. I got a 4-year degree that really didn't qualify me to do anything except sales. And my first sales job as an adult was working for Nutrisystem weight loss centers, selling weight loss, an intangible, a dream, a desire. And the way I was trained to sell, it was pre-computer days, so we had our physical version of a PowerPoint presentation. It was flip cards on this lucite stand. And, the client would be looking at one side and I'd be reading the script on the other side. And what I found very quickly was that script was insulting and demeaning, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. I lasted a week. That's all. Because I felt like, if I were on the receiving end of this, I wouldn't put up with it. So it's very hard to sell something you don't believe in what you're doing and how you're doing it. So that I was confused because on the one hand, I loved earning money. On the other hand, I didn't want to do it in an insulting, demeaning, destructive way. So I set about finding a better way to sell. The two things that we run into, and I want to call these out very clearly so that we know and can talk about as Christians what it is we're coming up against with this negative prejudice. When we apply any kind of pressure, it is manipulation. When we try to convince someone, it is a form of trying to control. And that equates with witchcraft. The other thing that we sense is when someone just wants our money. So the love of money is motivated by a spirit called unrighteous mammon. You know, the scripture where Jesus talks about money, there are a lot of scriptures that speak against unrighteous mammon. There are two stories that praise businessmen. It's the story of the talents and the story of the minas. So Jesus uses those two stories to highlight servant leadership in the marketplace and good stewardship of resources to double and be able to reinvest. So when he says it's the love of money that is the root of all kinds of evil, he's talking about the unrighteous spirit of mammon. When we love money, money controls us. When we control money as a good steward of money, we control it, we make it work for us. That is righteous in the eyes of the Lord. So it's really important. If you hadn't realized that before, this is the teachings around money and the false message of prosperity that has been twisted. So there's a truth about prosperity, and then the way the enemy has twisted it. All of those things play into the minds of people as they go about buying and selling. So we need to be aware of what we're up against so that we can be more effective in countering these strategies that the enemy has been using against us. So the problem with sales, the buyer-seller conflict, boils down to buyers are afraid of being taken, pushed into something that they don't really need, don't really want, isn't in their best interest. And sellers are afraid they won't make quota. They won't be able to pay their bills. They won't be able to keep the lights on at the business. So bottom line, both are feeling vulnerable and defensive. And this is a conflict that is driven by fear of lack. If we take it out of the sales environment specifically and look at it more as a matter of communication in general, it's the same dynamic. And we see this playing out in our world quite a bit today. It's the tale of two perspectives or two sides. One side says, I'm right. And the other side says, no, I'm right. There's no dialogue. There's no meeting of the minds. Both are feeling frustrated, defensive, and conflict arises, again, driven by fear. There is no way to win at this game. So we have to change the rules of engagement. And thankfully, Jesus gives us the answer. It's simple, but it's not easy. And the answer is love, pure love, unconditional love, servant-motivated love. So 2 scriptures about love. There are so many, but I pulled these 2 because the first one is the summary of the commandments. First, love the Lord your God, and second, love your neighbor. And Matthew 7:12 is the golden rule. In everything you do, be careful to treat others in the same way you'd want them to treat you, for that is the essence of all the teachings of the law and the prophets. So it's simple, but as I said, it's not easy. And then we have this scripture, Matthew 10:16. This is one that is rarely preached on. I don't know that I've ever heard a sermon on it. And these are Jesus' words. Now remember, it is I who send you out, even though you feel vulnerable as lambs going into a pack of wolves. So be shrewd as snakes and as harmless as doves. So these are the words of Jesus to the apostles, to the 70, just before they go on their first mission trip, right? So let's look at this. Be smart, perceptive, sharp, insightful, discerning. Harmless means be innocent, inoffensive, not hurtful, loving. So this is the balance that we have to find. We have to be able to be smart, perceptive, discerning, and loving as we go into the marketplace. So how can we? Bottom line, what we're doing is looking at this concept, and now we're going to do the work to make it real in everyday language, because if we can't take concepts like these and make them practical and actionable, then they remain a concept and it doesn't help anybody. So how can we demonstrate love in a sales conversation? Moving from fear-based to love-based communication starts with a shift of our mindset. We first have to realize and internalize that sales is not about convincing someone to buy from me or convincing them to like me. It's okay if they do like you. It's more important that they trust you. Convincing is me trying to control what you believe. Instead, we're going to shift and make it a discovery process or a diagnostic process that helps people discover for themselves what's really important to them, what they want to invest, if at all, and if they're willing to make a decision to pull the trigger and actually do something to make the investment to take care of the issue. So discovery, not convincing, is where our shift has to start. And then we have to change what we do based on this mindset. So our thoughts drive our actions. If we're trying to help people discover things, then as we go about asking questions and listening, we are helping people see our faith through what we do, our actions. We're living out our values as we engage in every aspect of sales, whether it's cold or warm calls, a sales conversation, a follow-up call, a customer service call, a billing discussion, going out to deliver products or services. It doesn't matter what stage of the customer journey you're engaging with that prospect or customer in. You want to be able to be consistent in how you present who you are and who your company is and how you go about doing things so that your love is expressed through all of those venues. And I mentioned trust. Cultivating trust is something that we can never lose sight of the importance of. And we need to be doing that not just with the strangers that we meet in business, and some of them we ultimately do business with, but also with our employees, our inner circle of friends, our families, with everyone that we meet, no matter where we are. So let's look at love a little more closely. And 1 Corinthians 13 helps us do that. This is the first page of your worksheets. What I've done is break out some of the love is and love isn't statements that Paul has given us. And here's where we're going to do a little bit of work. Bob, how much time do we have left?
We've got about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect. What I'd like to do is work through one or maybe two of these examples, and I'm going to ask you guys to pick which one you want to work through. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take one of these love statements, and then we're going to look at where and we'll focus it in on customer interactions for these purposes. Where in the customer conversation might we be able to demonstrate this kind of love? And then we'll look at what does it sound like, or what does it look like when it's put into action? So do you see one that you'd like to work on?
I'll go with love is patient, gentle, and kind, the first one, just because a lot of times that's the toughest part. But it's hard sometimes to be patient, with people and their timelines versus ours. So I'd love to hear your insights on that.
Yes. So how do we demonstrate patience, just generally?
I'm not a patient person, so I'm not going to answer that one. How do you guys demonstrate patience?
Well, and let me add something too, because Bob, your situation is real. So here we're back to be shrewd but gentle, right? We have to always be looking at this balance. So we want to be patient, and we are trying to bring people to a decision, right? So they've tried, they haven't bought, they're hanging in midair without making a decision. As a salesperson, it is our job to get a decision. But here's what's important about that. It's the other person's decision to make, not mine. So I can't twist their arm to go one way or the other, right? They are the decision maker. I'm the decision gatherer. I ask for the decision, but it's their decision to make. Okay? So there's a balance to be had there. So patience, let's take this specific situation. How does patience or gentleness or kindness apply in this follow-up situation? Anybody?
I think for me, it's patience goes hand in hand with curiosity.
Oh, good.
I talk to people about their decision-making process. It's not confrontational. It's, hey, let's sit down and put all of the, business reasons for doing this, or what you're thinking about, all of the variables and factors out on a whiteboard or out on a sheet of paper, and let's sit side by side and look at it together and just process. And so that's creating time, creating space, facilitating genuine curious questions that pull out and kind of shepherd someone towards a decision. And sometimes that's all they need.
That's a great example. And I love the mention of curiosity. Being curious to learn, curious to understand. I would put out there that it's actually kind to ask someone to make a decision because you believe in the mission, right, Bob?
Absolutely.
And this person could benefit.
Right.
So then let's take Megan's method of let's look at all the factors. Let's talk through what attracted you to it. What did you like about it? Let's look at what's holding you back from moving forward, or what's holding you back from making a decision one way or the other, right? Isn't that being kind?
And then I think leaving the end of that conversation and saying, just, hey, whenever you're ready to make the decision or move forward or not move forward, just reach out and let me know. That's giving them, kind of the patience piece to process through all that.
Yes. Yes. And even one step beyond that, asking them when they want you to follow up with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that again puts the control back in their lap, being respectful of their timing and asking them to tell you when that timing is so that you can cooperate with their process. Bob, what did you get out of this?
So I think it's a reminder that, to me, just some of the verbiage that Megan was using and that you used. I love that question, what's holding you back? It's been a long time since I've been in a role where I've been asking people to move, on a decision. And that curiosity side is just being curious about it, kind of comparing it all out. I think it's going to be very helpful as I have these conversations, just those reminders.
Excellent. Yes, their discovery. There's education, and that is one way, typically from business owner, ministry owner to potential. There is discovery, which is dialogue, where we are asking questions with the goal of helping someone think through their own situation. It's their situation. They've brought it forward, and they did so for a reason. Our job is to help uncover not just the superficial reason, because there's always an intellectual starting point that is driven by an emotional need. So you'll hear people say the purchase is made emotionally and then it's rationalized intellectually. We always have to rationalize the purchase, but the actual purchase decision is made at an emotional level because we're trying to eliminate pain, avoid something we're afraid of, or reach some kind of goal, the absence of which is going to cause pain. So it comes back to that mental shift of, I need to understand you and your situation as fully as I can, because once I hear from you, as I listen, I'm matching up everything that you're saying against what I know that we can and do offer. And if there's not a good fit, I'm going to hear it very quickly. If you're asking for something that I'm not equipped to help with, or I'm not the best fit for you, then I'm going to be able to very quickly say, whoa, time out. I'm hearing this. Is that what you really mean? If so, I'm going to be honest and state what I need to state, and then give them the choice. Should we stop, or do you want to keep going? So it's that dialogue is critical. And in this world of everybody wants everything quick and electronic communication, which it has its purpose that's very beneficial, but it is not a conversation. Now, I have been almost convinced that text can be a conversation. I say almost because tone of voice is still missing. And most of the time, people are not just texting immediately back and forth. There's a time lag. Whenever there's a time lag, you lose momentum and continuity of conversation. So conversation is critical, and I'm glad, Bob, that you are shifting. I'll just share. As I have been writing a book was a completely new experience for me. Marketing what I do with a book has been completely new. So I've tried lots of things, and I've looked at what the experts are doing through Facebook, through Amazon, here, there, and was finding myself getting extremely frustrated until, oh, gee, I really ought to pray about this, right? Okay, pray first. That's my new commitment. But I finally got around to it. It's like, Lord, what do you want? What am I supposed to do? I've tried everything. It's not working. Help. And he reminded me of Heidi Baker, a missionary in Mozambique who ministers to thousands of orphans. And she said, when somebody asked her, Heidi, how do you do it? She said, I minister to the one that's in front of me. And that's the only one I focus on at that time. And that's how she reaches thousands. She's probably reached millions at this point after 20 some years in the African bush. Let me encourage you to do this. Use the answer key on page 2 to look and see just some top of mind ideas that I had of ways that we can put these love statements into action. And I'm going to encourage you to look at the communication opportunities that you have. It may not be sales. It might be group work, team leading. It might be within your family, but any place where you can start practicing shifting gears from trying to get people to see things from your perspective to opening a dialogue that elicits that discovery process where both you and they are learning about the subject at hand because you're going deeper than you've ever gone before. You're eliminating assumptions because you're asking the deeper questions to get that level of understanding that really puts you at a place where you can have a meeting of the minds. And if not a meeting of the minds, a secure knowledge that you are on opposite sides, and then you can shake hands and respect each other's position and agree to disagree. So look for places that you can implement these concepts. Remember that the process of change always starts with being aware. So seeing from a new perspective, considering facts, data, and then making a conscious decision to make a change and put some flesh to what you want to do. In order to do that, you might have to seek out strategies, wisdom, knowledge, information, and then create an action plan for yourself. Set an objective, a singular, doable objective, and create actually, I'm going to encourage you to identify specific behaviors or even phrases or questions that you can start implementing, and then keep track of when you use those strategies and how they work. So the idea is to name a behavior that is replicable and measurable, and then put it into action and measure the results and make adjustments as you go so that you continuously improve. A different way of looking at sales. It's a specialized form of leadership. It's servant leadership. Leadership draws out the best in others. So why not be a leader in the buyer-seller relationship? And the key skills are asking and listening. So with that, I will leave you with my website. There are free resources. You can schedule a time to talk with me individually. I do free consults. I love to chat about your experience. If you do read my book, I love to hear how it's impacting you and what you're putting into action. So with that, I will give it back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.